Hi everyone, welcome to the MrpTech podcast. This is episode 122. My name is Matt, and this is the weekly podcast discussing everyday tech for everyday people. This week's episode is going to be sort of a side tangent for me. And if you have a subscription to ShowTime, this Sunday night, November 18th, ShowTime will premiere a new miniseries event directed by Ben Stiller, and it's called Escape at Dannemora. And if you're not sure what this is about, this is a recreation of a famous prison escape that happened back in 2015. Now, this made its rounds around the country. It also made its rounds around the world too, as I had heard from various people in Europe that knew about the prison break. Now, why is this important to me is because this happened literally about 10 miles from my house. So if you're not sure, if you haven't heard about this, this is probably the strangest story that you'll ever hear. And I want to take a step back and talk about this prison located in Dannemora, New York. And the name of the prison is called Clinton Correctional Facility. It was originally built in 1844. It's a maximum security prison. And basically it was originally built so that the prisoners in the prison could work in local mines. There were several mining operations in the area. And basically the prison itself wasn't at all profitable until about 1877. Prisoners were then put to other tasks, other trades. And when that happened, a massive concrete wall about 60 feet high was built and surrounded one section of the most maximum secure part of the prison. Now, I've had family members work at the prison. I've got friends who work at the prison, and it employs about 1,000 people. But when this prison was built, it earned a nickname of New York's Little Siberia. This prison was built in an area with little population. It was built in an area that was surrounded by really dense forests, and the weather in our area is not very habitable most of the time anyway. The winters are extremely harsh. Even in the summertime, you can get lots of rain, and it is the largest maximum security prison and the third oldest prison in New York. Now, this prison is known for holding the worst of the worst, so to speak. It's had several notable people stay varying lengths and terms in the prison itself. One of the most famous people that have stayed there, Tupac Shakur, was there for 9 months in 1995 after being released on an appeal. And over the 100-year plus history of the prison, a few people have escaped. It's a common myth that nobody ever escaped the prison. A few people did escape early on from some of the outer portions of the prison, and even the maximum secure part of the prison in the early 1900s, there was an escape. Most of those people were caught and returned behind bars, but not in a extremely long time. So the following thoughts are going to be my perspective on this whole event, just from one person's point of view. And we're going to talk about the days and weeks of the prison escape from somebody who was close by, local. We're going to talk a little bit about Ben Stiller's miniseries, because Ben Stiller and his crew actually came back to our area, and they actually filmed these scenes locally. Now, to start off, a couple of things happened right after the prison escape was over with. Okay, so first things first, there are many people that either worked in the prison system or had family that worked in the prison system that heard the stories coming from behind the wall, so to speak. And so here's what happened. On June 6th of 2015, the correction guards doing their morning rounds, checking on the safety, well-being, and making sure all the prisoners were accounted for in the morning, noticed that 2 prisoners had escaped. One of them being Richard Matt, who was a convicted murderer, and the other one, David Sweat, who I believe was also a convicted murderer, spending 25 years to life in prison. They were noticed. They were found missing in the morning, which prompted a nationwide manhunt. And as details came out, it was probably one of the most screwed up, messed up stories that you'll ever hear. It's a story of manipulation. It's a story of attempted murder. It's a story of how these prisoners influenced prison guards and other prison staff. And so here's basically what happened in a nutshell. And by all means, there is more details than this. So Richard Matt and David Sweat got close enough to prison staff where they started manipulating a woman named Joyce Mitchell. Now, Joyce Mitchell was a married woman, and I believe her and her husband both had different jobs inside the prison. I could be wrong on the detail with her husband, but Joyce worked in the prison, was not a prison guard, but prison staff, and eventually Richard Matt and David Sweat manipulated her to believing and falling in love with them. They told her about the escape, that they wanted to escape the prison and flee to Mexico, and that they wanted her to come with them. They ultimately made a deal that once they escaped, they would kill her husband and then flee together. So, being that Richard Matt and David Sweat were on what was called the honor block, they had a little bit more freedom to do things like cook in their cell. Had a little bit more freedom than most of the other prisoners. Now, how they ended up on the honor block, I'm not really sure. But you have to understand that when you're in a life sentence, 25 years to life, sometimes you need these things sometimes you will need these types of things to, give rewards for prisoners for good behavior and such things. And some people don't agree that that's the case, but it is something that's offered to prisoners, even these convicted murderers. So, if you have ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption, it is a very similar story. Basically, what happened is they manipulated Joyce Mitchell and a prison guard, and eventually to the point where they were allowed to be brought in food from outside the prison. And what they did is they were actually able to hide hacksaw blades in ground beef, and it was smuggled into the prison. And they cut a panel out of the back of their cell during the nighttime. Now, there's a lot of noise in a prison. So you would think that wouldn't somebody hear this in the case of using power tools and this type of thing? There's a lot of noise. They cut through a back panel to a maintenance hallway. From that point, they cut into what I believe was a heating system pipe or a ventilation system pipe or something similar to that. It's about 1.5 feet around. They cut into that, and from there, they spent who knows how long trying to find their way out of the prison. And every night they would go down, I believe one of them would go down and sort of try to map out how to get out. Eventually coming to a brick wall, which they made their way through, and then into a sewer system, which brought them out into the street just outside the prison walls, where they escaped from a manhole and then fled the scene. Now, the night of the escape, when they finally figured their way out, the night of the escape, Joyce Mitchell was supposed to meet them in the middle of the night. And she had a panic attack She went to the hospital complaining of chest pains, mostly, I believe, due to having second thoughts about the whole thing. Now, a lot of people believe Joyce Mitchell was in on it the whole time. She is now behind bars. She ruined her name. She wanted to kill her husband. Some people believe that she was just absolutely manipulated 100% and that she's actually a victim. I'm not going to comment either way on what I think that happened. But she didn't show up the night of the escape. She was supposed to be the getaway car. And so when they got out, she wasn't there. She was actually in the hospital, and they just fled on foot. And the following day, I remember opening up my computer and seeing the news headlines that these prisoners had escaped, and hearing that an escape actually happened from this prison. If you've ever seen the walls, it was quite shocking to hear. And the whole area, I mean, the road that neighbors my property, or our property, leads directly to Dannemora, and it literally, a little less than 10 miles is the prison, and it's the main artery to that town. So at this point, I'm sending messages to people I know saying, just be aware, this is going on, this is happening. And really, the whole surrounding area over the next few days turned into almost like a war zone. There were hundreds of officers that showed up. Whether it's state police or the CERT teams from Department of Corrections, all searching the woods in helicopters, in four-wheelers, in police cars. Every road blocked that led in and out of the surrounding area. And the roads surrounding the prison kind of formed like a giant triangle and on one side. So all those roads were blocked. I had an aunt who had property near there, a few miles south, and her backyard was covered with officials wearing camouflage. Across the road, they lined up, who knows how many, could have been hundreds, lining up to search the area. Helicopters landing and dropping off equipment, dropping off personnel. And all of these officers were extremely well armed. They were not kidding around. These were two really awful people that had escaped. And I don't want to discuss the backstories here of Richard Matt and David Sweat, but some of the things that they did were really awful stuff. So they coordinated all around. Now, an inside story about this that I have heard is that shortly after the escape, the helicopters actually spotted these two in the woods. And the governor at the time, Andrew Cuomo, had made an official decision that he wanted the New York State Police to capture them rather than the Department of Corrections. So this angered a lot of people because at this point, Department of Corrections could have done it, and the state police were not available to do this at this point in time. So having to wait caused them to lose track of the prisoners, and then they lost them where they were. So this angered a lot of the prison guards, angered a lot of the local community hearing the story afterwards, and really caused this to be extended farther than it needed to be. So Andrew Cuomo ended up flying his helicopter in, making a big press conference, making it a big scene, having the state troopers all around him, when it could have been ended very quickly, I guess. So at that point, they wouldn't let anybody else but the state police investigate, because it was quite obvious at the time that someone helped in some way to make this escape happen. So weeks go by, and every day they're still searching. The school that I teach at is an hour south of the prison, and it was concert season. We were supposed to have a concert. Various other schools weren't even in session because the ones that were closer to the prison, because of the terrain and the woods surrounding the schools. They could have very easily been there. So schools were being canceled, and it's close to like Regents Weeks and that type of stuff. Kids have state exams, final exams. It really messed up a lot of things. So for us, our concert had to be held under lockdown because the morning of our concert, an hour south, someone reported seeing two men walking a railroad track just north of where we are, heading in our direction. Of course, this was with a barrage of false alarms because of the reward, obviously. That was part of the plan to help track down these inmates, and people just being on edge and being nervous. I myself was driving on the highway one morning shortly after the prison escape, and out of the corner of my eye, I see two people sitting on the edge of the highway. They're both wearing all blue, and I can remember seeing their heads. The sun was reflecting on their heads, so they were kind of balding issues, and they were looking the other direction, so I didn't get a good shot at them. But I had never seen anybody sitting in this sort of swamp area before. So, of course, I called it in, and I just explained it's probably not them, but go check it out. So everybody on edge trying to help out in any way that they could with this escape. So we had our concert under lockdown, just to be on the safe side. Very strange experience. And oddly enough, some of my students still joke that we actually, unintentionally, we were already playing a song that was played in Jason Mraz's band. He would always feature his band during his concerts, and he had a band that was called the Groove Line Horns playing behind him, and they were kind of, one song that they were famous for playing during these concerts was called Cop Chase. So I would have my jazz band play this song every once in a while. It just so happens we were playing it again. So here we are, prison escape, and we have this song Cop Chase we're playing. So this went on for the whole month of June. Started on June 6th, and I believe everything was wrapped up by June 28th. One of the largest manhunts in history. I won't go on to say exactly how everything happened because I don't want to spoil the miniseries by any means. But going on now, I want to talk about this miniseries coming up, Escape at Dannemora. So the people in my area are known for being people of many trades. It's a very difficult area to live in economically. We have protection agencies that keep our mountainous areas wild. We have restrictions on what can be built, what companies can come in, that type of thing. We have very low economic area mixed with small cities, from small cities to rural areas to really rural areas that aren't even on the grid, so to speak. And the people up here are really tough people. They can be some of the most friendliest people you'll ever meet, willing to do anything for you, for anybody else, or for people they don't even know. But at the same time, sort of on guard from people outside of the area. And so one of those things, as the prison escape was sort of concluding, talk began to swirl about movies being made about this event. And many people were on edge when they found out that Ben Stiller was going to be producing a movie or a miniseries on the event. So Ben Stiller, obviously known for his comedic roles, started coming to our area. And he started interviewing people, started learning about the process. And it became very clear very quickly that he was taking this very seriously. And it was not going to be a comedy or a mocking the event. He wanted to learn about this. Something about this intrigued him, and he wanted to broaden his career into the drama aspect. And so at the same time as all this is going on, Lifetime comes out with a movie series that basically made a joke of the whole thing. It was probably the most awful, and everybody knew it right from the beginning. The Lifetime movie was called New York Prison Break: The Seduction of Joyce Mitchell, appeared on Lifetime, and everybody knew from our area going into it that it was not going to be anywhere near accurate, and some people just avoided watching it altogether because they didn't want our area to get a bad name, bad rep. So when Ben Stiller started coming around, actually doing research, causing the local area to be a little on edge about what it is he was doing. And so he came out, he wants to do like an 8-episode miniseries. So he travels to the exact locations where everything happened, examine how the prison break actually happened, and put out a casting notice to anybody local who wanted to be extras in this film, in this local film. So basically, he is now asking for local state police officers, retired correction officers to be a part of this. And some of the people that were actually involved actually were in this film. I keep calling it film miniseries because it's very kind of difficult to track down, not being in the loop of what it is. I know it's a miniseries, but I think of it as an extended edition of a movie, basically. And so actually using local people, anybody with experience in law enforcement, experience in may have worked in prisons, that type of thing. And they opened up a theater for the day, and they basically just had casting calls. And my older brother actually went to the casting. I had to work that day. Most people didn't want anything to do with it, but a few people were interested. I say a few, but they pretty much packed the theater. And my older brother went to it and was actually invited to participate. He was actually a forest ranger, and probably will appear in the later episodes. He always jokes he'll probably get 0.00002 seconds of airtime by the time it's all edited, but he was a part of it, and had the whole behind the scenes aspect of how a movie or series is filmed. Now they pretty much took over our whole local city here, and they filmed in all sorts of different places. When they came to town, they were as organized and as well prepared for what they were shooting that particular day or days. I cannot even express. They had rented out parking lots for their rigs and trucks. They had signs up across town for all the drivers that didn't know where they were going. And they were very kind to all the local people. They were very respectful. They knew very well that this was a touchy subject. And I remember going to the local town board over an issue that I was having on my road, talking about certain things that were happening on my road. And at that same meeting, they were talking about how Ben Stiller wanted to come to the local towns and roads and just do some filming, but they weren't going to announce what roads yet. Well, it turns out they were also going to film on the road that we live on. So we get a notice on our front door. We're gone one day, and basically it's a note, and we luckily we were gone, but basically we were asked to if our house could be the house of Joyce Mitchell. And it's not every day that you get asked to have a house where you could be in a major series or be shown on TV. And this is a real touchy subject because some people believe Joyce Mitchell was in on it the whole time. She was obviously there to help them get out of jail. She fell in love with them and wanted to get them out and go ride the sunset out in Mexico. Other people feel that she was manipulated. She was a victim, and we didn't want anything to do with that. So we said, no, we're not gonna do that. But they ended up using a house just down the road from us, and they went in and they completely renovated. They took all the materials out of the house. They completely renovated it, making it look like a 1970s house. And we started getting messages on our mailboxes saying that they're going to film on this particular day. And so basically they said, we're going to be filming from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. on such and such a day. And just be aware that there might be road closures. It's a dead end road. So there might be a road closure, but it shouldn't affect you too much, but this is what's going on. So comes the day of their filming on our road, and I get home from school and our road's open. There's no blockage or anything like that. But boy, I tell you what, I've never seen so many of my neighbors out walking their dogs at one time. And it wasn't just at it was at 5 o'clock and at 5:30 and at 6 and at 6:30. Everybody was kind of walking up and down the road because there's some, famous actors. Ben Stiller was going to be there. Benicio del Toro is playing one of the I believe he played Richard Matt. And so there's other big names here. Patricia Arquette's in this as well. And Paul Dano playing one of the other escaped convicts. So it's not every day you have a series filmed on your street. So I remember driving around the city and at night, a few days before this, and there are black SUVs driving around with commercial plates, and we've happened to just be going the same direction as one of them at one point in time. And sure enough, they pull into their staging area where all this is. And I had a feeling it was probably Ben Stiller or one of the actors. They actually used a fire hydrant right across from our house, loading up water trucks. Apparently they're filming a rain scene somewhere and they needed lots of water. So they told us that don't be surprised if during the middle of the night, anywhere from midnight to 3 a.m., these trucks come and load up from the fire extinguishers, or fire hydrants, I should say, and take it to wherever they needed it to. So this went on for a couple of days, and then they went away. They were here in certain areas, and there were other areas around town on different nights, and just looking for actual areas where they could film. Got permission from landowners, property owners. They actually went back to some of the actual locations and filmed there as well. So as somebody who lives from my area, we appreciate the fact that Ben Stiller took the time to actually come in and get to know the people. They would go to restaurants and they would talk with people. People actually mentioned some of the actors and whether it was Ben Stiller or some of the other actors actually were mall walkers. So they would go to our local mall, walk the mall and meet people. So they took into the local community quite well. And I think the community accepted them. And we're all hoping that the turnout for this, we're really hoping that this is something that turns out well. It's well produced with good actors that gives our region a positive light. And even though this was an extremely stressful situation, that it has a spin on it that doesn't look like a giant mockery of something. Because quite honestly, there were a lot of mistakes that were made. There were budget cuts to the prison. There was lax security. There was issues with prison guards not being where they're supposed to be, not monitoring these maintenance hallways, that type of thing. And I'm overgeneralizing the whole story because each person has their own different story and accounts of what happened up here. And these are third person accounts that I'm sort of generalizing all this stuff. So I'm not expecting all the details and everything that I've said here to be 100% the case of what happened, because there's pros and cons to everything with this story. The idea here is to talk about these movie studios coming into an area that generally doesn't have big name actors come in or producers. And it's very easy to take advantage of people. It's very easy to just say, "Oh yeah, don't worry about us. We're going to come and we're going to take over your whole city, but don't worry about us. We're going to get everything right." So everybody up here is a little nervous about this whole miniseries event. And from my perspective, if everything that they have done thus far, coming and treating people respectfully, everything that they have done has been exactly what they said they were going to do. And that may lead to other things happening in our area, other movies made. I mean, this area is a beautiful area. It's a very mountainous area. Lots of opportunities for other types of movies to be filmed here. And if Ben Stiller set it up right, it may open a door for other things. So again, the premiere is Sunday night, the 18th. Ben Stiller has actually rented out a local movie theater here to do a premiere of the first episode, I believe. And they actually gave out free tickets to the show. I am not going to the show. I don't usually particularly like large crowds, so I'm avoiding that situation in general. But a lot of people are going from the area. A lot of people that were involved got their tickets, and it should be a fun night for everybody to see at least the first episode. But just a few days later on, ShowTime is making its premiere. So if you have ShowTime, check it out. If you don't have ShowTime, I put some photos in the Discord chat room for us. And if you want to go to my website, mrptechreviews.com, I posted some photos. Some of them are photos from my aunt who just basically took pictures out of her front yard at all the commotion. Other photos are from online sources as well, just to kind of share some background information on it. There is all sorts of information on YouTube too. If you type in Dannemora prison escape, that's DANNEMORA, that will give you the news clips from the escape and a little bit of more of the serious vibe from the escape itself. So that I encourage you to check out some of the pictures in our Discord chat room. Come to the chat room and hang out with us, because during the week we have some awful good conversations. And I don't know what I guess maybe the premiere prompted me to post the photos in the chat room. I wasn't planning on doing a show on this, so it just happens to be a last minute change of plans here again. But if you'd like to check out the rest of my shows, you can go to podnuts.com, check out the MrpTech podcast and all the other great shows on the Podnuts Tech Podcast Network. Other than that, if you'd like other things, you want to support my show, you can go to patreon.com/mrptech. I'd love to have you support. If you really like the show, you really want to help me out, that's the best way to do that. And check out my website, as I mentioned earlier, mrptechreviews.com. And that's where I post some things from time to time, sort of during the off-air times of the show. So thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. A little bit of backstory about the whole prison escape that happened here from a local person's perspective. It's just one person's perspective, as I mentioned. Everybody else has other perspectives. Some people think the state police did a great job. Some people think the state police did a terrible job. Some people hated what the governor did coming in and trying to make it about him. Other people thought he did a really good job. Some people thought the district attorneys did a good job. Some people not so much. Some people thought the prison guards, they rallied against the prison guards and wanted to support them as much as possible. Other people thought the prison guards were lax and messing up their job. So this is a very political situation. Not going to get into it. Not going to say what my personal beliefs are. There's a lot to this story that I'm not covering, but I thought you might want to check out the miniseries if you're interested in that type of thing. It's looking pretty good. The trailers are also available on YouTube. They are, if you look up Escape at Dannemora, I always kind of mispronounce the title. I used to say Escape from Dannemora. It's Escape at Dannemora is the name of the title. And either one, you'll find the results on YouTube. You can watch the trailer. Trailer looked actually pretty good. So I'm going to check it out. I encourage you all to check it out. Thanks so much for listening this week, guys. We will see you next time.